The spring 2022 Premier League Wiffle season is almost upon us, and all 10 PLW managers were asked to rank each team in the league from 1 to 10. In this year's preseason poll, managers were also asked to give us a projected record for each team. They were all averaged together to give us the final results. Coming in at number 10, the Cajuns, with a projected record of 21-33. Manager Andrew Leday took over the Stonemen after a blockbuster deal at the trade deadline last fall, and has rebranded the team to their new moniker, the Cajuns. Leday's roster at the time of the trade included 3 players that went undrafted: Casey Nielsen, Bucky Wantman, and Sashi Boba. Leday then made trades to acquire 3 players that weren't getting much playing time on their respective teams: Bo Evans of the Lightning, Johnny Yepez of the Ones, and Anthony Michael of the Vaders. After trading away most of his assets, Leday came away with another left-handed pitcher in Ryan Roosh and a couple extra draft picks. He selected Will Morris with the 2nd overall pick, Kiefer McClendon with the 3rd overall, Ryan Roosh's brother Nathan Roosh with the 6th pick, and Sean Suller with the 16th. This ragtag group of Wifflers makes a great underdog, but don't be surprised to see them in the hunt for a playoff spot down the stretch. Leday has his work cut out for him managing this team, but if he figures out his pitching rotation early, the Cajuns will take a lot of teams by surprise. At number 9, the Legends, with a projected record of 21-33. The Legends finished at the bottom of the PLW West Division last season, but their 19-20 record would have had them finishing 2nd in the PLW East. They may be happier than any team to see the league nix the divisional alignment, with each team now playing a home and away series against all 9 opponents. Manager Brad Ogden didn't have any roster turnover, with Billy Osgood, Casey Taravella, Jason Stevenson, Nick Sansone, Alex Garcia, Derek Corral, James Church, Tony Garay, and Ethan Wigfield all returning from last year's squad. They selected Chris Coleman with the 5th overall pick in the draft to shore up their roster, but expect to see more of the same out of the Legends this season. One notable change is the hip of Nick Sansone. Sansone is coming off a hip replacement surgery and says he feels great with increased mobility, so Casey Taravella may not be the only one running across the outfield this season. As a self-proclaimed group of old guys without big egos, the Legends should be fine with being overlooked as they sneak their way into the playoffs. Coming in at number 8, the Lightning, with a projected record of 22-32. As soon as the Night Owls won their way back into the league in the Challengers Tournament, manager Chad Phillips made another roster move, trading Jason Walker to the Night Owls for Tony Daly. Bruce Uson, Kyle Lohman, Jake Purdy, Devlin Daniel, Tyler Walensky, and Tim Riley all returned from last season's roster that snuck into the playoffs. C.J. Peterson is also expected to be at more games this season. Phillips traded his first-round pick, but was able to draft Josh Atkinson 12th overall. Cody Runnels fell to 23rd overall. They had to waive T.J. Brown in order to take Dennis O'Brien with the 24th pick, rounding out their roster. Purdy and Devlin are sure to be the 1-2 punch on the rubber, but the 3rd starting spot could be a revolving door unless someone steps up. Phillips has confidence in his players, and if they show that same confidence in themselves, they may shock everyone as one of the top teams in the league. At number 7, it's the Night Owls, with a projected record of 23-31. The Night Owls finished dead last in the fall season, and they were almost knocked out of the league by Dave Cabrera's Kingsmen in the Challengers Tournament. But a heroic 3-run homer off the bat of A.J. Petrovsky kept the Night Owls in the league. That homer also allowed the Owls to retain their 1st overall pick in the draft, where they selected 8-year MLB veteran Josh Towers. Towers has already played part of 2 seasons in the AAA Taco League. He played with the Night Owls in the last tournament, and he's sure to have an immediate impact in the PLW. With their 2nd-round pick, the Owls selected lefty Kyle Baker, and in the 3rd round they added Josh Tucker, waiving Nick Hamlin and Dave Seifert to make room on their roster. Both out-of-town Wifflers on the Owls, Randy Dalby and James Stein, are expected to be eligible for playoffs this season, despite the increase to 20 games for playoff eligibility in this 54-game season. Manager Nick Davella also has Brandon Mayo, Barry Hutter, Matty Levine, and Joe Keither returning from last year's roster. And he acquired Jason Walker from the Lightning in a trade as his first act as manager upon winning his way back into the league. Expect the Night Owls to be a scrappy team this season, as playing to avoid relegation may turn into playing for a championship. Coming in at number 6, it's the Warbirds, with a projected record of 25-29. The Warbirds seemed a little burned out at the end of the fall season, but they appear to be rejuvenated after a 10-week layoff. Their only pick in the draft was James Perez at 4th overall, and manager Chris Warfield has Matt Petrikis, Jim Dotis, Sean Merciel, Dan Pickering, Buck Burner, KJ LaCroix, Nate Sariski, and Nate Ruiz all returning. Out-of-town slugger Peter Maccabee is expected to be in the mix more often for the Birds this season, and when he's in the lineup, he's sure to be a difference maker. Petrikis and Dotis both have shown the ability to take over a game, but their teammates need to take some of the pressure off them so they won't have to. If the Warbirds hit the ground running and put some runs on the board, they may soar to the top of the standings. But if it's more of the same, they could be in for a long season. At number 5, it's the Vaders, with a projected record of 26-28. Manager Cesai Alarcón wasted no time making off-season roster moves, trading Ryan Roosh and Anthony Michael to the Cajuns in exchange for Nate Stepna, just a few days after the season ended. The Vaders will also have Kyle Etter returning to the team after a brief hiatus to bolster their lineup. They drafted Jake Slusher with the 15th overall pick, Scott Burley with the 18th overall pick, and Jamison Steed with the 22nd overall. Rookie of the Year Tanner Roundy, Billy Santiwan, Logan Christie, Alonzo Valencia, Gio Battistoni, and Ethan Ibarra are all returning from last year's squad, which made the playoffs as a challenging team in their first season. Christie is out for most of the season recovering from a shoulder surgery to repair a torn labrum, but is expected to return as early as mid-April if all goes well. Santiwan and Roundy form a formidable 1-2 punch at the top of the pitching rotation, but if Stepna's attendance is spotty, someone else will have to step up to fill that third starting spot in Christie's absence. With a full PLW season under their belt, the Vaders will know what to expect from the get-go, and if they get off to a hot start, they may never cool down. At number 4, it's the Bombers, with a projected record of 30-24. The Bombers were just 6 outs away from advancing to their first championship series last season, and surely that left a bad taste in their mouths going into the winter break. Manager Alex Fernandez has both his brothers, Max and Mateo Fernandez, their father Big Al, Trevor Bauer, and Hollis Hale returning from their playoff roster last season. They've also got phenom Justin Grenier, Garrett Brandt, and Brian Pooter on the roster, but it remains to be seen whether or not they'll show up. The Bombers also added Jake Shirley with the 7th overall pick in the draft, Zach Beal with the 17th pick, and Lonell Simmons with their final selection to round out the roster. The trio of brothers form a formidable pitching rotation, but their offense is still a work in progress. Mateo and Bauer both put together good seasons at the plate, but it was a pretty steep drop-off from there. They'll need someone else to step up, or Grenier to show up, in order to put more runs on the board. But their pitching staff is strong enough to get away with winning low-scoring games. If the Bombers can get their offense to explode, they may leave a lot of teams shell-shocked. Coming in at number 3, it's the Snappers, with a projected record of 33-21. The Snappers reached the championship series in every season so far, thanks in large part to 3-time MVP and fall season Cy Young winner Taylor Briner. Unfortunately, Briner is suffering from a broken left hand and will have to resort to the one-handed swing he developed at the end of last season. Shane Weber, Manny Santillanes Jr., Johnny Castaneda, Jonathan Wilson, Jesse Capps, Greg Kelly, Chris Gishwinder, and Brandon Gregg are all returning from last season. But defensive specialist Michael Aguara has moved, and Christian Santillanes is also unlikely to play this season. The Snappers' only pick in the draft was Scott Labrado at 20th overall, but the Snappers already have a fairly deep roster, with Briner, Weber, and Wilson cemented into the pitching rotation. If they're able to get the lineup rolling before Briner is back at full strength and Castaneda is at the majority of the games, they'll be nearly unstoppable when Briner is back at the top of the lineup. Even if they don't, their pitching will be good enough to keep them in games, but a slow start for the Snappers could spell trouble. At number 2, it's the Sand Vipers, with a projected record of 33-21. The defending champions drafted 5 players to fill up their roster. Cody Giordano at 8th overall, Mark Tavano at 9th, Glenn Meadows at 10th, Jordan Robles at 13th, and Dustin Flenche at 14th. Giordano and Tavano have shown the potential to have an immediate impact offensively, and Meadows appears to be a tough out as well. Robles lives in New York, so he's unlikely to play much, if at all, this season, but he was ranked as the number 1 player in the country in 2019. If he does show up, he'll be a difference maker for the Sand Vipers, even if he doesn't qualify for the playoffs. Casey Herzog is another player on their roster who will most likely be dormant for the spring season, but manager Adam Tannick, Trench Pacone, Tom Gannon, Justin Hicks, Michael Dean, and David Harley Jr. are all returning from the Vipers' championship run last fall. Tannick, Gannon, and Pacone will likely pick up right where they left off as the 3 starting pitchers, and Hicks has shown the ability to throw strikes when called upon. If one or more of the Sand Viper rookies can produce offensively, the Vipers will be in a great position to defend their title. And coming in first in the power rankings, it's the Ones, with a 36-18 projected record. The Ones won the PLW championship in the summer season, but found themselves in the Challengers tournament after being knocked out of the league by the Cajuns and Legends in the playdowns. The loss of Cy Young winner Ryan Chen and playoff MVP Cody Schmidt was a major reason for this, as Adam Couts had to step in and become the team's ace in the fall. It's no surprise to see the Ones back on top of the power rankings with their dynamic duo returning to the rotation this season, and they also have 4 more capable pitchers in Levi Lawrence, Austin Bull, Joel Gutierrez, and Justin Spurrier returning from last year's squad. Manager Scotez Dobbins also has Spencer Barrick and Tyler Applezoller to round out his roster. So the Ones decided to forego the draft this spring. With the deepest pitching rotation in the league and one of the strongest lineups as well, it's safe to say the Ones will be back in the playoffs this season, even if they underperform. The PLW spring season begins on Monday, February 7th, with a 3-game series between the Ones and the Bombers. Tune in live on Twitch at 6:05 Pacific Standard Time.